It is time for Rewind-A-Dynamite. I am John Pollock, and joining me by himself this week, it is the representation from upNXT. He is one Davie Portman, who is here. Hello, Davie.
Hello. How are you, John?
I'm doing well. This is a post Dynamite, a very busy edition of Dynamite, so I'm still catching my breath and doing the crazy 5-minute interlude between Dynamite ending and this show starting. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Been a nice day. Had recorded a show with Braden earlier for the Patreon, and pretty chilled. Got to relax a bit today before Dynamite, which is nice because it's kind of wild. As soon as it hits 8 o'clock, doesn't really stop.
How do you find note taking for Dynamite in comparison to everything else?
I've kind of had to scale back. Like it's just too much. I kind of just bullet point what happens and like the odd thought and hope that my memory can kind of and like conversation can jolt that, because otherwise you never look up at the screen because there's always something happening. And to be fair, 2.0 is kind of like that as well. They cram in so many segments in that show. It's pretty relentless.
Yeah, I will say that the Dynamite is definitely the most intense, because I've also got Cino's like running report on the site that I'm constantly updating, and then it's just all of it at once. So it's a busy show, but we have plenty to talk about from Dynamite. I don't think you could possibly. I mean, if Braden comes home tonight and says, "Hey, what happened on Dynamite tonight?" I mean, like, how do you even answer that question other than just watch the goddamn show?
I mean, they even tried to squeeze an angle in like the last 5 seconds of the show tonight. I was ready. It ended. I'm setting up, and then okay, we're DDTing Dragon Lee here as well. Okay.
Yeah, it was quite the show, I will say, that we will be getting into. But off the top, I just want to let everybody know that we are winding down our G1 Climax coverage. We have a show from Tuesday up with Mike Murray chatting about the final round-robin matches. Earlier today, I did a show with Bruce Lord going through today's semifinal matches. And then on Thursday, Bruce and I are going to be going live for all Cafe members at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you will get the live link in your inbox Thursday morning with how you can join us live at 1 Eastern. We'll go through the finals. We're also going to hand out our G1 awards, best match, top performers, and we'll also dole out worst performer, worst matches as well to keep it all balanced. But that is wrapping up, and Thursday will be a very busy day because the wellness policy is dropping with Jordan Goodman and Neil Flanagan. They will be live in the afternoon, and then a free edition of MCU Later with Rich and Melissa Fan joining WH Park to go over episode 1 of She-Hulk. So very busy day here at Post Wrestling. And what is happening across town in upNXTville?
Well, we've got our review of last night's NXT Heatwave. That's up on the upNXT feed with some news coming out of that one with the whole NXT UK crossover starting to happen. We also recorded a show earlier today called Was Next for our Patreon, where we're talking all about the October 23rd, 2013 edition of NXT, featuring former tag partners Adrian Neville and Corey Graves going at it. You've got Sasha Banks in full boss mode with the BFFs taking on Emma. That's always quite a fun show to look back and kind of see where they are now. And then, John, I mean, I know today we're celebrating dragons, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of dragon conversation as the show goes on. But this Friday is National Orangutan Day.
I mean, do you have to even tell people and remind them? I mean, this is a national holiday for most.
I mean, unfortunately, you're going to be covering SmackDown and Rampage this Orangutan Day. But how do you normally celebrate your Orangutan Days, John?
You know what? It's sometimes it's going out for a nice special lunch. I get the family together. We all reminisce about our fellow experiences when it comes to orangutans, because everyone's got an orangutan story from their history. So that's always, we usually do buffet. That's our go-to.
Go to the Mandarin or something.
Mandarin is more rhinoceros day, but
okay,
orangutans sometimes it depends.
Well, we're going to be celebrating Orangutan Day by talking about probably the greatest orangutan movie ever made, Dunstan Checks In. This has been in the works.
Sorry, is there a worse? Is there like the worst orangutan movie ever made? I mean, how deep does the list go, Davey, when you were researching titles of how to celebrate?
To be honest, we just wanted to talk about this film, and we were trying to just find a way to tie it in, and it just happens this Friday's Orangutan Day.
That's
so
wonderful.
It's win-win. So, yep, we're talking about that. Next week, we've got coming up a best match ever, looking at Rey Mysterio to kind of belatedly celebrate his 20 years in WWE, and looking at A Few Good Men, which is our man Neil's pick for us to review. So we're going to be looking at that film as well. And always a lot going on. I believe I'm joining Scrump and Kate from Montreal this weekend to talk all about Better Call Saul, because we just had the series finale of that, wrapping up kind of 13 years of the whole Breaking Bad story. So excited to talk to those two about that. But always a lot going on with the upNXT lads.
Yes. So go check out all of that. They also recently did a review of Heatwave 1998. So you got all Heatwaves covered.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
yes.
We've. I guess if they do another one, we'll have to do 99 next year.
Yeah, very very different shows from 1998 and 2022. But maybe you can contrast the attitudes and content of the time in 1998 and juxtapose it to what we saw on Tuesday night. So all of that happening with upNXT. So I definitely recommend everyone go check all of that out. And we have a few news items to get to before tonight's Dynamite review. The Wall Street Journal put out their latest report, which, I mean, whenever the Wall Street Journal reports something, you know Stamford, Connecticut is just sounding the alarm. But this one, quite honestly, if you had been following Brandon Thurston's reporting over the last week and listened to WrestleNomics, I mean, he largely connected the dots here and pretty much hit the nail on the head that this outstanding $5 million that was the latest unrecorded expenses that WWE discovered in relation to Vince McMahon. These did not have anything to do with NDAs, but rather donations to the Donald J. Trump Foundation. And in the article, which you can catch on the Wall Street Journal site, there was a WWE attorney that said that the payments should have been recorded as business expenses, and they were payments that benefited the company, although not stating how they benefited the company. And the same attorney did not dispute that the donations were related to Donald Trump's appearances, both in 2007 in relation to WrestleMania 23 and the Battle of the Billionaires, and 2009 when he came in, bought Raw, and then sold Raw back to Vince McMahon. So, I mean, this is one where it's more so just a continuation of the unrecorded expenses for Vince McMahon, but at the same time, it's because Donald Trump is attached. You see this one getting more coverage just because of the players involved here, Davie? Or do you think that this is kind of a story there's a lot bigger things going on with Donald Trump than something involving Vince McMahon?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel with both of them, there's bigger stuff going on. I mean, we all know the McMahons are kind of some of Trump's biggest donors, and they've been friends and stuff. I don't think that's any kind of big secret that is being revealed.
They're pretty much like responsible for like almost all the donations that have come to the Donald J. Trump Foundation were courtesy of, these payments represent like so much of what that foundation received, especially in those years.
So the story, like it was unreported and it was kind of linked to his appearances. So I don't.
Again, this is more so just it should have been, it's money that should have been recorded as company expenses. I mean, this on its own, I don't feel would have been it's hard to say when it comes to just like, it has been more so the handling of these expenses than the actual actions that they represented, more so in relation to the NDAs, that it seemed that Vince McMahon was going to weather that storm. It was only once you're talking about potential issues with the SEC and, the handling of, expenses as they're related to a public company that seemed to be what was the poison pill for Vince McMahon. Also noted in all of this is the fact that in relation to WrestleMania 23, that Mr. Trump had his associates review the contract to ensure that under no circumstances would Mr. McMahon be allowed to shave his head, even if Mr. Trump's wrestler, that being Bobby Lashley, dropped dead in the ring, this person said. That's how meticulous Donald Trump was to make sure there was not going to be any double cross at WrestleMania, Davie. And Donald Trump was not going to, be held down and shaved bald by any means here, per the letter of the contract.
He'd clearly been watching all the multiple Montreal Screwjob documentaries and was like, "There's no way that's happened to me." And this head of hair.
I mean, Donald Trump was not going to let Sean put him in his own finisher in Montreal. There was no way. He's not giving him that chance. I mean, a savvy operator, this Donald Trump, when it comes to pro wrestling contracts. But that is the latest. I definitely encourage people to listen to the latest WrestleNomics, because Brandon went really deep into all of this and just tying it together. And the fact that this 5 million linked up with, like, this has been the source of, questions over the years about these funds, because originally the Donald J. Trump Foundation had reported it as donations from WWE, and then it was actually Vince McMahon that made the donations and making that kind of that separation there as well. But that whole story is up on the Wall Street Journal site with Ted Mann and Joe Palazzolo. We also have the G1 Climax. Did you get to see any of the semifinal matches earlier today, Davie?
I watched Naito Ospreay.
What did you think of the match?
Oh, tremendous. Yeah, awesome. And goes well with my predictions as well, I gotta say. I know I can't win the thing, but I'm hoping for maybe a bronze in the E block.
Well, yeah, we will have the contest winners announced on Thursday, so everyone can tune into that and find out how Davie performed and how the entire E block turned out. Some interesting findings here on this final day. But yeah, this was an incredible match. I thought match of the tournament. I thought really, like, this would probably up there among all-time G1 matches. Like, I just thought this match was out of this world. I think it's going to be a very solid contender for match of the year. And they have put out the whole card for Thursday. So in the main event, it will be Will Ospreay and Kazuchika Okada to determine the G1 winner. And then underneath, we're going to have a lot of tag matches. Jay White and Taiji Ishimori against Tama Tonga and Kushida. Hiroshi Tanahashi and David Finlay against the Good Brothers. Shingo Takagi and Hiromu against Kenta and El Phantasmo. Lance Archer, Zack Sabre Jr. and Taichi against Tetsuya Naito, Sonata, and Bushi. Juice Robinson, Bad Luck Fale, and Chase Owens against Great O'Khan, Aaron Hanare, and Jeff Cobb. Jonah and Bad Dude Tito against Tom Lawler and Royce Isaacs. And it opens with an 8-man tag, Evil, Yujiro Sho, and Dick Togo against Hiroki Goto, Tomohiro Ishii, Yoshihashi, and Yo. So there you have it. Their third show at Budokan Hall. How much of the G1 were you following this season, Davie? Have you kind of just been cherry picking matches? And I know the three of us kind of talked about this with G1 prior, but this is certainly one where I think interest has waned throughout the tournament. But I do sense a lot of people kind of checking in for these final couple of nights when the winner's going to be decided.
Yeah, it's definitely the least I've ever watched G1 since kind of getting on board a few years ago. I've tried to cherry pick. I've been keeping up with your kind of daily shows covering the G1 to kind of hear what's been good, what hasn't been good, where the standings are, all that kind of stuff. The kind of format hasn't really interested me too much. I feel it's taken away from some kind of bigger matches you're used to getting on this when it's just the 2 blocks of 10. And just, I think that's what made Naito and Ospreay so special, is it felt fresh. And I think so much over the last kind of 3 years with New Japan is nothing's fresh. Even when they announce Shingo and Ospreay, you go, oh, it's going to be great. But I have seen that match 4 times in the last 2 years or whatever it is. So I think that's why kind of Naito and Ospreay really hit with me, because it did feel fresh, new, and obviously was a great match on top of that all.
Yeah, I'd say after watching like the new format in action this year, I think the 2 blocks is the superior method. I just think it's a lot easier for fans to follow. It's to me just easier for a lot of the stories that are going on. I think the gaps kind of took away some of the momentum for different performers. I also think 24 is a lot of people to put into this tournament. I don't know if they'll scale that down, but I am curious if they revert back to 2 blocks for next year.
Yeah, I hope they do, 100%.
And last thing here is just the ratings from the last 2 nights. Raw was first on cable for the 4th consecutive week, down 4% with 1,978,000 viewers and a 0.53, almost identical to last week. So 18 to 34, they did see a bit of a drop of 17%, but this was a show that it was back to the usual pattern where it was the 3rd hour that fell. If you remember last week, the 3rd hour actually beat out hour 1, but this this week it was back to the normal pattern with the second hour being the most watched. And then Heatwave, maybe a surprise to some, maybe not others, but this was their most watched episode of the year. Most watched going back to Halloween Havoc of last October with 723,000 viewers, up 21% this week, and placing 5th on cable. Very strong performance by NXT, and it was their second highest 18 to 49 number of the year with 0.18 in that demo. Everything was up. Women 18 to 49 was up significantly over most of what they have done this year as well. But this was a very good number for Heatwave, and I thought it was a pretty enjoyable show overall. I thought that Braun Breaker and JD McDonough had really great chemistry together in the main event.
Yeah, I think it was more the most interesting show they've put on for a while, and obviously this is the first kind of NXT branded show since the Triple H takeover as well, so that might have had a bit of a factor. For me, my interest was kind of in the Santos Escobar and Toni D'Angelo match, because that's a story that they have been going for quite a few months. And especially now, as soon as you do a loser leaves town kind of gimmick and the climate now on the main roster with the changes, I definitely think there was some interest there with what's going to happen with Santos and Legado and whether we'll see him leave NXT. And also the Giovanni Vinci, Carmelo Hayes match.
They had a very good match. Very good match.
And that was definitely one that was appealing to me beforehand. So I think of these kind of special shows they've done, I thought this was probably one of the stronger cards they've presented since the 2.0 takeover.
Is there anyone that jumps out? I guess, Santos Escobar would probably be near the top of the list, but any other acts that you could see maybe making the transition now that they're starting to look at, replenishing rosters? Is there anyone that you could see as being kind of head and shoulders above others when it comes to decision-making time?
I think as an act, I think Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams are ready. I think Trick could benefit with a bit more time in NXT for the wrestling, but as a tandem, I think they're great, and I think they're completely ready to go up as an act. Giovanni Vinci, I wonder if eventually you'll see him rejoin his friends Gunther and what's his name now, Marcel Bartel,
Ludwig Kaiser.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see if he joins then. But I do actually think of the kind of people who've come over from the Black and Gold brand, this kind of reinvention of Vinci has benefited him. I think he's actually gained from this change and solidifying him as more of a singles act.
It's really good for him because, man, he was just left as the odd man out and was just like, here he was part of this cool act and then dropped cold and had to reinvent himself, and seems like he's going to land on his feet out of all of this. And yeah, that had a really great performance, I thought, with Hayes in that opener on Tuesday night. So if you want a whole review of Heatwave, do check out Tuesday's Up Next with Braden and Davie. But we now dive into Dynamite, and we'll be taking your feedback at the end. So if you want to get in any of your super chats or up at the forum, you can do so, and we will get to your questions and comments. So Charleston, West Virginia, the Charleston Coliseum. Who knew what kind of a show that they were going to be getting on this show? Quite the episode of Dynamite. House of Dragon promoted all over here, and we got... they tried to get every dragon that they reasonably could onto this show. So they had a House of Dragon themed open all over the guardrails, canvas. I mean, how did you feel the promotion came across for House of Dragon?
I thought it was great. I actually really liked this opening video they did of the kind of trailer for House of Dragons mixed in with all the feuds going into this show. When you kind of compare this sort of cross promotion compared to the Army of the Dead stuff we had a year or so ago in WWE, it's night and day. I think this is a great way to do it, and tying things in, like having Ricky the Dragon Steamboat there and the Dragon versus the Dragon Slayer. I thought it was pretty smart.
Yeah, and honestly, like, we can look at all the angles and stuff. It's like this kind of stuff is very, very valuable for AEW standing within Warner Brothers Discovery, and seeing this as, hey, this is one of our top shows on cable that we can use as a promotional vehicle for our big projects. And this is not the first time that they've utilized them. So this stuff to me is always very important for the integration. But CM Punk starts the show, and he comes out, and as he's walking down the stage, he thinks about jumping into the crowd, but then quickly stops and just shakes his head. No, there's not going to be any crowd dive here. And he just makes his way to the ring, and there's a massive chant for Punk. He has a challenge to make for someone from around these parts in Virginia, and he calls out Hangman Page, who can have his rematch right now. There is no answer, and Punk says, that's not cowboy shit, that's coward shit. And he ends it by stating that the apology needs to be as loud and public as the disrespect. Everyone wants to be the champ until it's time to do champ shit. So this was a very interesting start to this promo, and taking us back to the title change and the promo leading into their match by Hangman Page, just running down Punk and reigniting this.
Yeah, not where I thought it was going at all. And throughout this whole promo, it's interesting because obviously we've had this roadblock with Punk's injury, but I can see seeds being planted for a heel turn with Punk, because all these baby faces in the company are kind of saying, we see through your shit. But the crowd are still loving this guy. He hasn't done anything particularly heelish. But this here kind of, wasn't it Shawn Michaels once called out Undertaker when he knew he'd done a tape thing, so Undertaker couldn't come out, and
yes,
kind of did it on the fly?
Yes, they did that. I think they went over this on one of those biographies, I think.
Yeah, and that's the kind of vibe I was getting here with Punk, kind of knowing Hangman's not there, but let's call him out to make him look weak. Because the Hangman character, if he was there, would absolutely come out. But it just makes him look a bit of a putz not showing up. So it was a really interesting kind of start, because you think we're going right to, okay, we're getting Punk Moxley. He's going to address Mox being interim champion and make this match happen. But going after Hangman, who he's still kind of pissed off from the comments he made months ago before their championship match, was an interesting twist.
So, like, this was like a full heel promo by Punk, but it was under the guise of like your old, like the Michael Hayes rule that the best heels are the ones that believe they are right. And Punk is constantly running down all the fans' favorites, and but he keeps going back. Tell me when I'm telling lies, as he runs down their favorites. And this audience, it was almost like, man, we love Punk, but we don't want to hear him, speak ill of all these guys. He says that Jon Moxley can be number one in the fans' hearts, but there's only one champion, and Moxley has always been number two, and he's the third best guy in his own group, a reoccurring theme in his career. And the crowd just ate that one up. Punk says he is the best. He just keeps going. Tell me when I'm lying. He says that Moxley was the interim champion. Look it up. It means temporary. And he won't even test himself against his best friend. And then refers to Eddie Kingston as only the third best Eddie that Punk has ever faced, and the second best Kingston he's ever shared a locker room with. And this crowd, they just thought these were like daggers being delivered here. So
who's the third Eddie here?
Okay, so on Pro Wrestling Database, I looked this up. So everyone, of course, goes to Eddie Guerrero. And there are two potential candidates that this could be. That being Fast Eddie Vegas and Eddie Craven, who he faced in a tag match in OVW, I believe, in 2006. So, I mean, these were some deep cuts for anyone that really wants to go down the path and ranking Eddie Kingston behind them.
What's your favorite Eddie Vegas match, John?
Oh, you know what? What happens in a Eddie Vegas match usually stays in an Eddie Vegas match. It doesn't necessarily bring back too many memories. But yeah, he was one of those guys in ROH and I think some Full Impact Pro. But yeah, this required some research, and he's looking to test himself and his foot at All Out. And then it notes that Moxley isn't even going to be the first John that he's beaten in Chicago. Dude, this crowd just loved all of this guess the reference game that CM Punk was introduced for them. And as Wild Thing starts, Punk is just groaning at how long it's going to take Moxley, and he just starts doing snow angels in the ring. Another callback to asshole Punk. I thought Punk was just awesome here. I thought this was like a fantastic promo, and it was enough rooted in a guy that's just completely, he is speaking his truth, and and this was just a big personal issue between these two, and you're going to have your Punk fans and your Moxley fans, but this was certainly directing Punk in a heel direction. And as you mentioned, you have all of these baby faces lined up for him. Besides Moxley, you've got Kingston, you've got Hangman, and you've got MJF down the road as well as an option whenever that plays itself out.
Yeah, I definitely found it really interesting. And the Punk's known for these, his pipe bombs and stuff. But this is definitely the most heelish he's been so far. But we know these crowds kind of, whenever you do the insider stuff, I'm thinking of like the Cena Reigns feud when they did that the first time.
Right.
And
yep.
I'm getting all that kind of vibe with this, and the crowd tend to like it. And especially when we thought we had 3 weeks before the match. Now you're building a feud for next week. You kind of needed to bring out the knives tonight to get this feud ready. And I think it absolutely did that.
Yeah, Moxley is out, and he gets into the ring, says, oh, look at Punk dropping pipe bombs. Well, you're writing checks with your mouth that your body can't cash, living in a fantasy world, and that Punk usually isn't even the best wrestler in catering. All the words you spit into a mic don't mean shit. The title on your shoulder doesn't mean shit, which Punk took exception to. But then Moxley says the belt on my shoulder doesn't mean shit until I beat you. Punk says, you can be the heart and soul, I'll be the dollars and cents. And Moxley is sick of the term interim and says that everyone knows that Punk only came to AEW because he had run out of money. And Moxley says the fighting spirit left you a long time ago and challenges Punk to do something about it. Punk explains that they have a pay-per-view match, and I'm afraid if I touch you, you're going to bleed all over me. So they go nose to nose, and then Moxley leans in and kisses the guy. And Punk comes back, slaps him hard, and they come to blows with the officials separating them, including one Ace Steel here, who played Donald Trump once on Raw, tying today's news in with Dynamite programming. So we get the big separation. I thought this was a tremendous segment, and by the end of it, I was like, man, you've got like what feels like a really big pay-per-view match. That was my thinking at 8:15 p.m.
Oh, absolutely. This did all the work you needed for this feud. I found the line, you'll be the heart and soul, I'll be the dollars and cents, absolutely the most heelish thing he's said, because right since he's been back, it's been about the wrestling, and his love for wrestling was killed by the other company. And then he's seen this place where wrestlers get to be wrestlers, and there's this camaraderie there and all that. And now he's just saying, I'm here for I make the money for this company. I'm the dollars and cents.
Was this too much of a shift for Punk? Like just abruptly?
I don't think so, because it's him getting at Mox. Mox is coming at him with stuff as well. I think you've seen quite a few times. You saw this with the Eddie feud, where kind of both guys at times don't come across the best. When you're fighting with people, sometimes you might say the wrong thing or whatever. And I think at the moment these two characters are so beloved by the fans, where they're going to pick who they want to go for. If you're a Punk fan, this isn't going to put you off Punk.
Yeah, I think sometimes like we can really like break these things down and dissect. And kind of my rule of thumb is that after this segment, were you more or less interested in this match? I was super interested in this match by the end of this segment. I thought both guys were fantastic. And like this, for a lot, it was, looking at this match and it's like, okay, it's Punk in Chicago, but Moxley's been having this great run. And by the end of this, I was like, man, this feels like a big match for AEW, but more on that to come. We go to the back and Shivani is with Powerhouse Hobbs, and he asked why he turned on Ricky Starks. And Hobbs says he doesn't need friends. And Ricky Starks told the world that he was okay with losing, and Hobbs isn't. Starks walked around like he was God's gift to the business, and you held on to me to protect you as champion, and you couldn't do it. I don't just break backs, I break necks, and he also has something for the factory. So a bunch going on here with one Powerhouse Hobbs, and I'm interested to see if this gets a pay-per-view slot, if this ends up on one of the Chicago TVs, because this is one where you're seeing all these programs coming together, Davie, and how many get on the pay-per-view. This is certainly one that is building up. I would think it gets on the pay-per-view, but I don't know if that's a guarantee unless we're going to have like some 12, 13, 14 match pay-per-view.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen from the last few pay-per-views that some of these cards come together right at the last minute, and there's still a lot of big players who haven't got a role yet. But I think I loved the turn a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was done so well, and I think Hobbs just sounds so comfortable in this role now. So the whole thing has really benefited both guys, and I would like to see them have the chance at the pay-per-view to absolutely kill it. But just when you're looking at kind of star power throughout, it could be one that gets bumped.
Ricky Steamboat is introduced as a guest commentator, the guest timekeeper is Jericho that's out on commentary. And we're starting things off with the 2 out of 3 falls match between Daniel Garcia and Bryan Danielson. And we start off, Danielson comes over, he shakes hands with Ricky Steamboat, and they note that Garcia's sharpshooter is now the Dragon Tamer, that Jericho has anointed it. So they start off, it's a great grappling sequence. We see Garcia going for a knee bar, Danielson for the heel hook, and Garcia is just playfully kicking at Danielson, who fires back with kicks in the corner. Danielson misses a knee off the apron, gets suplexed on the floor, and then into the ring. The sharpshooter gets countered with a triangle from Danielson, but Garcia lifts him up for a pile driver, applying the Dragon Sleeper, and Bryce Remsburg calls it off at around 9:22, so Garcia takes the first fall.
Yeah, that transition from the Dragon Tamer into the triangle to the pile driver was just so seamless and great. And Danielson's just, his punches, his body shots in this whole first fall, they just look so painful. He's so mean with his offense. Just right away, you had me. These two have had, this is what, their 3rd match now?
Yeah.
You know what you're getting into, so it's just sit back and enjoy.
Yeah, I mean the chemistry is just off the charts that these guys have, and this you could see was like a really well paced and structured match. And 2 out of 3 falls matches, they can be very tough to do, especially when we're talking they wanted to go long and you're on TV, and they had a ton of like picture-in-pictures and breaks. But I found myself like glued during these picture-in-picture because they were doing a lot of interesting stuff. The second fall begins, and he's stomping Danielson. The crowd is booing him, and Danielson is all dazed and gets drop kicked in the corner, and Danielson just collapses. And Garcia's doing the yes chant to mock the fans, and DDTs Danielson onto the exposed floor, busting him open, and then uses the Dragon Sleeper. But Danielson has one last breath here, and he flips Garcia off of his back and catches him with a cover to even it out. But it's really played up that Garcia just got caught, and Danielson was lucky to get this fall, so he's still sort of battling from underneath, even though they're evened up in the falls.
Danielson's just got such this great gift, because you know about his concussions and neck injuries and all that, and his selling is just so good, where you're genuinely concerned for this guy when anything happens. That spike pile driver, the DDT on the floor, you seeing the blood coming from him, his chest just so raw, and his like dazed eyes look. You go, okay, are you just acting now, Bryan, or is there something seriously wrong? And he gets me every match. He comes back and does this, and he's just a master at it.
I'm sure many would look at it as like this curse, but in his line of work, it's a blessing. Like his skin complexion and just how much he bruises up. I mean, this guy looks like he's been hit by a car after these matches, just all over the place.
He should never tan. Never tan.
So the third fall, we see Danielson come alive here after putting Garcia in a tree of woe. They end up on the turnbuckle, and Danielson hits a spider German followed by a missile dropkick, and then hits a tope suicida through the corner, and was lucky because his legs kind of caught on to the middle rope coming down, but did finish the dive. They each are holding on to their arms, and they pull the other into the post. So they're down. They did a count-out tease before getting in, and then they're just on their knees. And Danielson sits cross-legged. He eats these chops. Then he starts eating these PKs. but just keeps rising up, like doing a sit-up back into the seated position and eating these strikes from Garcia until getting to his feet and stopping the last PK with a big forearm smash, kicks in the chest of Garcia, and Garcia comes back and he gets the Dragon Tamer applied and leans far back enough that Danielson can get the grip around the neck and turn it into the label lock. Garcia changes it over, and Garcia hits the Busaiku knee, locks the hands, and they trade forearms. At one point, JR just yells, "God, I love this!" And Garcia is dropped with big elbows. They hold on to the wrists, and Garcia gets a sweep. He starts stomping down on Danielson, but Danielson gets up, goes for the triangle, and again, Garcia tries for the pile driver, but this time Danielson is ready for it, learning from the first fall, and he transitions it to the label lock, more elbows, and he just holds on to the label lock as Garcia goes out. This one went 25 minutes and 58 seconds, and Danielson is the winner with 2 falls to 1.
Yeah, these two are just awesome together, and I'd love to see it run back in a year or so with maybe bigger stakes, titles on the line or whatever. I'm surprised this wasn't on the pay-per-view, because this felt pay-per-view quality. I liked how it wasn't to the head, but the spot on the ring post on the outside felt
to
like
the shoulders,
back to the Nigel McGuinness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I really felt they were kind of going for that and just trying to kind of recapture the brutality from that match and kind of bring it to present day. This was great. And just Garcia, I feel every time he comes out, he's proving himself and just making a better name for himself. Even in loss here against Danielson, like, people are going to keep on talking about this match and these series of matches between these two.
He's got such a great swagger about him, and just the way he projects this attitude that you just feel like this guy is just full of confidence in this role. And I just think, like, the association he's had with Chris Jericho, like, I'm sure, like, that's taken on like a bit of a mentorship role. And Garcia, I think, has really taken to this in a big way. And you can just see the way he projects himself. It's very evident that, he has put a lot of the pieces together. Danielson is showing his respect afterwards and holds his hand out, and Daniel Garcia is about to shake his hand when Jericho leaves the broadcast area and jumps Danielson from behind, and Garcia stops Jericho, and the fans cheer, and Jericho starts scolding Garcia, putting his finger in his face, and Garcia swats it away. And Jericho tells him, "You better think about this," as the fans chant, "You're a wrestler."
Is this the first ever "You're a wrestler" chant?
It has to be. Yes. Unbelievable here. So, I mean, I don't know if this is just going to be like dangling this for something way down the road when they turn Garcia, or if they're going to go further with that. But this will lead to a segment next week where Jericho is going to have a face-to-face with Garcia, where he will have to tell him whose side he's on.
I mean, I think All Out's got to be Jericho versus Bryan for the custody of Garcia, does it not?
Okay. I thought you were going to go like a referee or something, the guy who's going to be caught in the middle here. But yes, custody of Daniel Garcia.
We haven't had a good custody match for a long time. I think it's time to bring it back.
It's been quite a while. Maybe he can like shave his hair or dye his hair blonde.
Yep. It would work. He'd work that.
They can find that social worker to sit with Daniel Garcia in the front row.
Yeah.
So Shivani is with us. Swerve in Our Glory and Private Party. Private Party are just ecstatic. They're ranked 5th now. And Cassidy said that Keith Lee embarrassed me once. He's not going to do it again on Friday. So that is our setup for our tag title match on Friday.
Yeah, I can't say I'm probably going to watch this one or really poor Private Party, but...
They were so happy that they're 5th.
In Our Glory, you're like, all right, you can have this match, whatever.
Toni Nese and Mark Sterling came out, and you're looking like this is pretty much the end of the first hour. And this was a hell of an hour. This start from that opening promo segment with Moxley and Punk, and then you had Danielson and Garcia take up pretty much the rest of the show, or the rest of the hour. And then suddenly Nese and Sterling come out, and you're like, what are they shoehorning in here? And Moxley just takes them both out, and he runs into the ring. He wants Punk right now. And Jim Ross is trying to explain it's not that easy. There's contracts. There's millions of dollars at stake. But Punk emerges from the back, and the security and officials are holding them apart. So we get yet another pull apart. And I will say, like, this very much felt like blowing up the formula of Dynamite. Like we don't get a whole lot of talking segments opening the show. It's very rare, and stuff like this, it's like it just felt like they were veering away from sort of the the show format, and it felt fresh.
Yeah, I liked it. First of all, Mox being the biggest babyface here, saving us from a Toni Nese match, and but yeah,
Josh Woods was spared though. Your favorite.
Apparently, I think Sino pointed out it was meant to be Nese versus Sonny Kiss. So Sonny Kiss just missing out on a Dynamite match again, unfortunately. But yeah, I love these pull aparts. I think the time they've done this before, I remember like Undertaker and Brock, where that kept on going out on throughout the show. And realistically, yeah, if you're going to want to fight each other, why are you going to, as soon as you're pulled to the side, just go home? I like that it was continuous. And we don't get a whole lot of these kind of show-long threads with Dynamite. And it just, made this match feel bigger and bigger throughout the show.
Shivani's with Jericho, Menard, and Parker, and Jericho's giving Garcia a pass, and this sets up the segment for next week where Garcia will have to determine where his allegiance lies. And with that, Ricky Steamboat walks in, revisiting his history with Chris Jericho, and says that Daniel Garcia is coming into his own. He doesn't need the Jericho Appreciation Society, and that Danielson would be a better mentor. Jericho says, I haven't liked you for 15 years. Stay out of my business. And it peaks with the others leaving and Angelo Parker screaming at Steamboat, grabbing him by the collar so that Steamboat can nail Parker. And I would imagine that Menard and Parker were both fighting for this spot to be the guy that gets to sell for Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah, it was cool having Steamboat on the show, and obviously that history with Jericho from their like WrestleMania and Backlash match was nice to see them interact here.
The Gun Club against the Varsity Blondes. This was short. Colton hit the Colt 45 onto Griff. 31 seconds it went, and Billy gets into the ring. He says, that's what they need to do. And he notes that he's been hard on his sons, but I'm proud of you. I've done a lot of great things in my career, but the one main thing is getting to work next to you. And they have a Gun family hug. And then Stokely Hathaway walks out, and I think everyone saw where this was going. Billy's got his back turned to Austin and Colton. He's all confused, and then he gets jumped by his sons. And the Acclaimed run down, the Guns hightail it out through the crowd, and they check on Billy. Jim Ross yells, quote, for those of us that no longer have a father, this is goddamn pathetic what Austin and Colton have done. And the tension in the air is alleviated when Anthony Bowen says, scissor me, daddy ass, and we got a three-way scissoring to end this segment. And Billy looking to be back with his adopted sons, the Acclaimed.
It's amazing what a good scissoring can do to cheer you up, right? Your sons have just turned your back on you, but all right, get a scissor. It's not so bad.
I wasn't as big a fan of this. I think mainly because to me, it was one turn too many in this whole thing that just a few weeks ago, we had the Gun Club turn on the Acclaimed out of nowhere. It's like, all right, you're separating them. And now Billy's like, all forgiven, he's back with them. Like, could we not have just plotted this out for weeks where it's thought of that Stokely is after the Acclaimed? Like, the Acclaimed would link up with Stokely. And then the big reveal is that, no, it's the Guns that are the ones being secretly recruited by Stokely. We get to the same place we are now, but we take out one of those turns in the middle that's pretty much meaningless now when they did that just a few weeks ago.
I think so. And we've had Billy attack the Acclaimed as well, have we not?
He was part of the attack with the Sons, and that was only a few weeks ago. It kind of makes no sense that the Acclaimed would have any care in the world about Billy's well-being.
Yeah, if Billy was stuck more in the middle, like surprised what his sons did, but well, I'm going to align with them because they're my sons, it would make more sense. But I'm with you. It has been a bit back and forth. You could have had Billy the Jungle Boy of this feud. The Luchasaurus of this feud, almost.
Yeah. I just think you could have had Billy like doubting the Acclaimed and thinking, are you guys jumping ship? Are you leaving? And it turns out he doesn't even think that it's my sons that are secretly linking up with Stokely. But here we are. So an added turn in all of this with I do like kind of the Acclaimed and Billy. Like they do have this weird chemistry with the three of them. So that is what we have coming out of this. And then Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and Satnam Singh issue a challenge to FTR and Wardlow at All Out, and Satnam Singh stating, Wardlow, powerbomb me if you're that strong. So that seems to be the whole basis of this match, is for Wardlow to give this guy a powerbomb. But I guess, it's a match for All Out.
This sucks. Like, FTR have been so hot this year, and Wardlow, both of them. I think they both deserve a lot more. Like, we've been talking on BD Elite like a while ago, before this trios thing was coming about with Kenny coming back. We thought you could main event with Bucks versus FTR in that winner takes all match, because both are so hot right now. Sorry, FTR now is going to face what? Satnam Singh and Sanjay Dutt?
Well, I don't know if you saw the undercard of the G1 today, but also coming for FTR's IWGP tag titles are Chase Owens and Bad Luck Fale.
Oh, wow. Exciting stuff.
So they're going to be busy.
Yeah. I think it's really unfortunate for Wardlow and FTR, and I kind of think they deserve better.
It's one where, I mean, we'll see how much time it gets, but it just seems the whole match is built around the powerbomb. And, FTR is sort of just, background players in all of this. I'm sure it'll be a fine match, but yeah, especially when you're talking about what FTR, just their latest match with the Briscoes and what they were coming off of. They haven't, it's sort of just, have that big moment, and then it's sort of like go to the back burner for a month, and then we reheat you up. And that seems to be the formula that FTR has found themselves in. Death Triangle promo. Pac addresses Will Ospreay. They're going to determine who the best British wrestler is. It's going to be a hell of a claim after today. I mean, Ospreay set the bar pretty high earlier in the day. And he's looking forward to next week with his brothers. So this is the match happening next week, right? With the Death Triangle against Pac and Will Ospreay.
Yeah, I mean, that should be awesome.
It looks excellent.
Looking forward to that, yeah.
Jungle Boy comes out and he refers to his Christian is a pussy shirt that he has been told he can never wear on TV again, and got in trouble for that. But the shirt did hit the nail on the head. He has tried to get his hands on Cage with his hands. He tried to get him with a chair. He even tried to hit him with a car. And Christian has done nothing about it. Whereas me, I never would have taken that. And says I could keep chasing Christian. And at this point, this crowd is giving him the what treatment, and it clearly rattled him at one point where he just stops mid-promo and looks into the crowd, but then got back on track to continue this, it was kind of funny because the guy credited with, starting this what thing was Christian on Steve Austin's voicemail.
Oh, is that so?
Yes. I thought if they were really just off the top of their head, I think Christian could have worked this in. But Christian interrupts him and says that they said things they didn't mean. And he puts in to Jungle Boy, you got a little personal in there, which was rather hilarious given his lines. And he doesn't want to fight or wrestle Jungle Boy. He wants to fix this. The crowd's chanting bullshit. And he says, Jungle Boy, you're like a son to me. And he opens up his arms. Jungle Boy thinks about it, takes him down, attacks him. And dude, he beats the shit out of Christian Cage. He rams his head, I don't know how many times, into the steps. He bashes his head just over and over, stomps his elbow, then he goes back to bashing the head into the side of the steps. I mean, this was just violent as hell from Jungle Boy, but that looks to be the all-out direction as expected.
Do you see this having any kind of stipulation added to it? Like street fight or Falls Count Anywhere or something like that? The fact it's got so violent.
Yeah, no legal ramifications match. Yes, maybe... Maybe they will do, because they've kind of introduced that with all these different elements with, the chairs. I mean, what have we got so far? We've gotten chairs, we've got stairs, we've got cars.
It's a different kind of TLC match, I guess. Add the cars in there. I feel this feud has been ready, and they're somewhat treading water a bit now. I'm looking forward to the match. I think it could be great between these two, but with the weird wrinkle with Luchasaurus, the kind of turning back in the middle, and here I didn't think Jungle Boy sounded quite as good as he did the other week, where he had that really great fired up promo. I feel the match is just ready now, so I don't know what they're going to be able to do over the next couple of weeks to kind of keep this, because I do feel I'm kind of starting to lose a little bit interest with it. But yeah, I just think it's kind of suffered from being ready kind of a month ago.
Wardlow and FTR respond to the challenge issued. Cash says, we came to help Wardlow, not because he needed or wanted help, but we're not going to let him get jumped by those clowns, and we can have a trios match. Wardlow says anyone and everyone gets powerbombed in regards to Satnam Singh, and Dax says that as of today, right now, I am the best wrestler in the world, and proposes a match with Jay Lethal for next week, So you'll get the best wrestler in the world and Will Ospreay next week on the same show together. Maybe they'll have a discussion.
Hey, I think there's an argument for Dax being one of the best wrestlers of the year. Absolutely,
he's had a phenomenal year. Yeah,
I think him and Jay Lethal could be pretty good. I'm just looking at Pro Wrestling Tees right now. The shirt Dax was wearing today was awesome, but it doesn't look like it's on sale. I think
you can keep your eyes out for it. Yes, This was quite the throwback. Kylan King against Toni Storm. They show Thunder Rosa watching in the back. Storm got out of the way of a drop kick, and King lands a knee off of the second turnbuckle, sending Storm to the floor. But then Storm tries a tornado DDT. That's blocked, and she's run into the apron and guardrail. We go through the break. Storm's draped on the corner, running knee to the ribs, but then comes back from that. King manages to slam her down. Storm kicks out, release German, and then the Sweet Cheeks music, which is the name now for her running hip attack that just looks like it takes people's heads off. Swinging DDT and then the pendulum DDT, and Toni Storm wins in 6 minutes and 48 seconds. And Thunder Rosa gave the most uninspired clapping in the back, looking like she is cheering for her friend, knowing that the camera's on her, but is not all that thrilled about it. And then they announced Thunder Rosa against Toni Storm for All Out.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty solid match between the two, but just suffered a little from lack of stakes, probably being the least important match on the show. I feel that's an issue with the women. It never feels a big deal. It's very rare that we get those kind of, Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker matches, which feel like a big main event. Whereas every week I feel on the men's side, we're talking about, we get Danielson Garcia this week. We get like Moxley and Jericho last week, Moxley and Punk next week. And this being the only women's segment on the show, and kind of Kylan King not being a permanent,
not
AEW
someone
wrestler.
Everyone's going to be as familiar with. And
Exactly.
I think it's tough to do these types of matches where kind of you understand like it's a setup match to give Toni a win, and you're going to stretch it over a commercial break. I think that's tough, and the crowd sees like the drop in star power when you're talking about someone that a lot of people in this crowd are, unless you're a dark viewer, and that's going back a whiles now when Kylan King was a regular on it, they're not going to know who it is. But it's it was just like your stepping stone match for Toni Storm. It gets her this win to set up Thunder Rosa and Toni Storm for All Out, which I do believe that will be a very strong match that those two have. Do you see them just going this almost heel direction with Thunder Rosa, that they're kind of hinting at now, that they're kind of playing this up that she is trying to keep Toni Storm close because she knows that she's a threat to her title?
I think it's the time to do it. I don't sense Thunder Rosa is getting those huge reactions she was getting. Because there was a period I'm remembering Grand Slam last year, people were really into Thunder Rosa and kind of singing the song and everything. You don't seem to get that quite as much anymore. So I think it would be a good time to turn her before kind of the crowd just completely sour on her. And then you have Toni as a clear babyface going for that title. And we have seen this match before, haven't we? They have had this before, but I can't say it's. I think it needs work, this feud, for sure.
The Trustbusters and Best Friends, there was a video hyping up Friday's Trios match with Sonny Kiss alongside the Trustbusters after joining them last Friday on Rampage. And then we get the roll call from Excalibur. So Friday's Rampage has the Trustbusters against the Best Friends, the returning Penelope Ford against Athena, Hook defends the FTW title against Zach Clayton, Swerve and Our Glory defend the tag titles against Private Party, and Claudio Castagnoli will speak.
Great.
Does this register on the Davie Portman scale?
Not really. I did enjoy the Best Friends promo.
It was fun
when they go like after 3 and all of them trios championship tournament and Orange is just trios tournament. Found that quite funny, but yeah, it's got to take something huge for me to really tune into Rampage. Sometimes I throw it on kind of Saturday day whilst doing other stuff, but I guess I got to see these Trustbusters at some point.
Well, Friday night seems to be their home, at least for the time being. Well, maybe they were worried that we're not going to grab Davie Portman on Friday. So how can we get his attention for next Wednesday? So we've got the Death Triangle against Will Ospreay and Aussie Open, Dax Harwood against Jay Lethal, and we're going to do CM Punk against Jon Moxley for the Undisputed Championship. And I think everyone just like shook their head at, huh?
I don't get it. I mean, this is huge. This looks like you've already got Ospreay on the show, which is that trios match is going to be nuts. But yeah, doing this next week, what do you theorize here? What's the all-out match?
I have to imagine that they're doing, like, I really can't see them doing this kind of a match on free television to lead to some disputed finish that just you run it back at the pay-per-view. I guess there's that chance, but I read this as they're going a different direction for All Out, and whether that's the Hangman tease that they just brought out at the beginning, whether it's a different opponent that they have in mind, something, I don't have an answer for you. This, I think, caught everybody off guard that you're doing this next week, and man, I watched this show. I'm like, man, you've got a solid pay-per-view main event. Like, this feels, you got a couple more weeks of this, and Punk in Chicago on the Go Home TV to go into this. Like, man, you're going to be in great shape with this main event. So I mean, this is one where I think everyone will be very curious because your option A is pretty damn strong. So what is option B?
MJF, perhaps. I mean, that's something you can heat up very quickly because the feud is already there with Punk. But then what is Mox doing? You've got two of your biggest stars in a match against each other, and then you've got to find something else for them to do in the next 2 weeks. It seems very odd.
Punk and MJF do have the history too in Chicago. That just, man, it feels really rushed because whatever this is, we're not going to know it until next week. And if you're shooting this angle at the end of the show, like, we're talking like you have 10 days before the pay-per-view. But if it's something like, I don't think they're doing this without, a solid belief that whatever we have planned, it's big enough. And if you have something incredible to do, 10 days will be enough if it's hot enough for people. It certainly caught many people off guard that they're doing this in 7 days.
I mean, we did see this time last year was the Christian Kenny match. They'd already announced that for All Out, and they gave us the match on TV earlier on that first Rampage. So
Punk only showed up like 2 weeks.
Again.
Punk was only there like 2 weeks or so before the pay-per-view. So it was like, everything came together pretty, just in those last couple of weeks. But it's certainly a very curious decision. And I mean, Taz was already pumping this up, the biggest match in Dynamite history. And this sounds like they're, this feels like it's going to be something very big next week, whatever they can muster. Like last week, Jericho and Moxley was built up very strong, and they were number one on cable, but it was also not, it's not like they blew the roof off their numbers either. But this is certainly going to test that of sort of what is your upper bound limit of what people are going to tune into, because this feels like a very, very, very big match for next week in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, if Punk does, you could go Punk and MJF, and then Mox teams with Danielson to take on Garcia and Jericho, maybe. It all seems a step down. It's very odd.
And then the main event is Andrade El Idolo, Rush, and Dragon Lee. They come out, followed by the Young Bucks, and it's just quiet. The crowd starts buzzing, and Justin Roberts opens up the paper to read the introduction, and he goes into the Kenny Omega lengthy laundry list of accolades, and this place just goes nuts as a battle cry hits, and out comes Kenny alongside Michael Nakazawa and Don Callis, who joins commentary. And Kenny Omega is coming out, and he's wearing this like dry fit shirt with like his shoulder wrapped up, and I felt like this was all like actually really well thought out, that this was Kenny Omega coming back. He's not 100%, and he kind of worked the match that way. And it kind of just escalated throughout. So the crowd goes absolutely insane for Omega. He's tagged in with Dragon Lee, and Jose distracts as Rush and Andrade double team Kenny, getting the heat as they go to the break. The Elite come back with a triple team vertical suplex. This crowd was, dude, they were just going to go nuts for anything that Kenny Omega does, any of the callback spots. Like, in actuality, this could have been the easiest match Kenny Omega worked, because he could do so little, and this crowd was going to go nuts for just about anything that he did. Andrade, Rush, and Lee take over again. We go through another picture-in-picture. At one point, Rush pulls up on the bull's horns, just kicking Matt in the face. And Matt comes back with a big super kick, hot tag to Kenny, and he hits 3 snapdragons. And he doesn't fully get the grip on the first one. And I think if you go back and watch this, like, there's all these little subtle things that he seemed to be doing that were just making things off. And maybe I'm giving too much credit here, but it kind of was the story I was following here, that Kenny was just trying to work like a step off, and things were not as smooth as he usually makes them out to be. And then the announcers just call this out, stating he isn't 100% yet. And the Bucks hit double super kicks, then a triple version. Andrade makes the save to Lee, and Kenny's starting to play like he's blowing up when he's tagged, and signals for the Terminator dive, but he gets stopped by Dragon Lee on the first attempt. On the second, his knee gives out, and then on a third try, Jose trips him, so he never gets to hit the dive. And then they place Kenny onto the guardrail. I was like, what are they going to do? And Dragon Lee hits one of the most frightening dives I've ever seen in my life. Boy. I thought Kenny Omega was dead. I thought Dragon Lee was not far from that state. This was absolutely insane.
And the kid in the front row.
Dude, the fans were all like they did separate the guardrail from the fans, but not by a crazy margin. Like this, I would have been running for the hills, dude, if this spot was being done around me. But this was absolutely insane. Like I was frightened watching this thing.
Yeah, this was stunning. It was the like Conhilo through the ropes, and just, as you said, no one moving.
The speed at which this went at, like I can't describe and do it justice, but it was just jaw dropping. This dive. So you're thinking like that's going to be the end of Kenny in the match, but he would return. Lee hits a jumping, leaping Rana to Nick off the apron after this insane dive. Andrade does the double moonsault, getting a 2 count on Omega, and then Andrade hits the hammerlock DDT. Matt shoves Rush on top to break it up. Omega manages a V-trigger to Lee, and then struggles and finally gets Lee up and manages the one-winged angel, and he wins in 20 minutes and 53 seconds. So it is the Bucks and Kenny Omega advancing in the trios tournament. But did you come away the same? Like, it felt like the big story of this is like Kenny. Like, the story is they thought that they could get Hangman Page, and a week ago they're turned down, and then Kenny calls them up, and he's coming back too soon, and that's kind of where it's like a less than optimal Kenny Omega that is part of this team.
Which, no, I took away exactly the same. Kind of reiterating what I said about the Danielson match earlier, where you know about the history, and Callis is kind of talking on commentary of everything he needed fixing up during this time, and Detail of wearing the shirt and just looking a little rough around the edges also kind of justifies him being in a trios tournament, where I know I've been one of those people going, you've got Kenny Omega, why would you not have him on your biggest show in a singles? And just, I think you've now got that Terminator dive spot where I think the next round match, he shouldn't hit it either. This should be a thing that builds up to our All Out. He finally, shirt comes off and he hits the Terminator dive. And the one-winged angel at the end, I thought was quite interesting, how he really struggled. He was using the ropes to get him up on his shoulders and everything. I thought it was definitely an interesting thing to add on this match, which you knew already that Rush, Andrade, Dragon Lee, the Bucks, Kenny, it was going to be great, but I think it added something extra to this match.
Yeah, it's certainly like a very, I would say, somewhat challenging role for Kenny Omega. Like, come out and be a lesser version of yourself. And I mean, I think if you're like real paying close attention, the guy coming out in the shirt, like you can see like this is where they're going. And it's really not till halfway during the match that the announcers are kind of telling this story and they do the obvious knee buckle. But if you watch the first half of this match, there's a lot of little things Kenny was doing that kind of set this all up, that it was actually quite a masterful performance when it's like you're taking a guy like Kenny Omega and saying, wrestle like a worse version of yourself. And I'm sure he sees this as like, this is a compelling story to do. And to your point, kind of watching this rehabilitation of Kenny Omega over the weeks, if not months, of this guy trying to bring himself back up to as close to 100%. So it was a very interesting match to watch from that sense. This crowd loved it. And then just as I'm grabbing all my stuff to come into the room, Andrade hits Dragon Lee with a hammerlock DDT. His mask falls off. The Elite are concerned about this. We got to go. We're out of here. It's like, what? I had whiplash after this.
Yeah, I didn't think this was needed at all. Dragon Lee, has he been on AEW before? I don't think so.
Not on AEW. He was on Ring of Honor.
Yeah, so he's not a character that we're necessarily familiar with. I mean, was it just a way to write him off so he's not there anymore? I don't think this was needed at all. Like, Roosh brought his brother in to help in the trios. You don't need to like turn on him at the end. It was very odd, and especially with not really any time to breathe with the Kenny victory or anything. It was
like that should have been
really
like that
odd way to finish the show.
Yeah, I really felt it was like squeezing something in that wasn't going to have the desired impact that you would want, like something like that. Okay, Andrade's turning on on Dragon Lee. I just think, everyone's attention was on Kenny. It's like, let that digest with your fans, and boom, you do this other angle that I don't know how much it resonated with people. If I'm sure there were people that might not have even caught it. It was that short. It was literally like the last 10 seconds of the show.
Yeah, it was odd. I did notice Kenny was checking on Dragon Lee at the end as well, but before the turn, I mean.
Right.
After pin, he was kind of chatting to him. But yeah, very odd.
So this was quite the Dynamite. I thought overall, like it was a pretty exciting show to watch. I thought the first hour was outstanding. The main event was really enjoyable too, as well. Like I thought this was like a really strong episode of Dynamite, but you're also left with like a lot of questions about where they are going, mainly the Punk Moxley stuff. But that's not a bad thing. I think it's going to add a lot of curiosity and speculation over the next week that's going to hype up like what is a major television match for them.
It definitely seems a deliberate thing from Tony Khan, because the last few pay-per-views, I feel we've been saying this like a few weeks out, going, what is the final card? And then by that final Rampage, you have 14 matches announced. But yeah, it's the Mox Punk thing is very odd, and I'd be really interested to hear other people's thoughts on it, where we're going, whether they're running it back in Chicago or not.
Well, that's why Davie Portman's a professional for that segue, because now we want to hear from you and what you had to say about Dynamite. First off, a couple super chats here from the EVP of Talent Relations. A 10 out of 10 Dynamite. Kenny's home. Well, thank you very much. Our favorite, Brandon from New Jersey. I think Andrade is turning on Dragon Lee. Thank you, Nostradamus. We appreciate it, as always. Brandon from New Jersey. Okay, let's go on over to forum.postwrestling.com. Do you want to go back and forth with feedback here, Dave?
Yeah, sure. I've got it here.
All right, first one is Benjamin. That Punk promo was fire, and that smooch from Mox, the smooch. Overall, good show, good matches. Still not enough women being featured. It's exhausting. Yeah,
I think pizza cutters were definitely the thing in wrestling in 2021. I think it's the smooch in 2022. Definitely seems to be used a lot. We go to Johnny, who says, great episode with a phenomenal promo segment with Punk and Mox, and an excellent 2 out of 3 falls match with Garcia getting elevated even more. Now I'm baffled as to why we are getting Mox versus Punk next week. If this was another company, it just screams non-finished DQ, but we don't get that in AEW, so why book it? Also, it's in Ohio, so you can't just beat Mox there. I'm glad Kenny is back, and I hope it's just playing up him returning or actual rust, but Kenny did not look as good as he usually does. Now I'm not expecting main event Omega off the bat, but maybe he has returned a bit early. Overall, I'm liking the road to All Out.
I think that was the complete intention that they were going for to try and tell. Next up, we go to her niece. Great start to the show. Surprising that Moxley and Punk are having their match next week. This has to lead to a DQ. Screwy finish, right? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to put a match like that on TV and give you that kind of a finish. I think people are kind of preconditioned to that in a WWE setting. I just think that would come across so poorly to this audience that has really been conditioned that, matches get endings, and doing a match this big that you have to end it on a big positive note.
Could you do the time limit draw, or have they done that a couple too many times?
It's an option. I guess the question would be, what is the benefit of doing this match on television and then bringing it back again at the pay-per-view, as opposed to having that first AEW meeting at the pay-per-view? Like, what is the benefit of doing it, for 30 or 60 minutes on TV first?
Yeah. We go to Hadela Cruz, who says, great start to the show. Surprising that Mox and Punk are having their match next week. Oh, sorry. That's what you just read, isn't it?
Oh, so I didn't finish her niece's here. Her niece. He just ends... Thoughts on what could be the match at All Out? We kind of went over that. Hinting at Eddie versus CM Punk at Arthur Ashe Stadium. I definitely expect Eddie Kingston to be in something significant at Arthur Ashe Stadium. Punk would be very, very significant. And ends it here. Was the ending expected because the camera almost didn't catch it? I imagine so. I don't think Andrade just felt like DDTing him out of his mask. So I think it was intentional.
We go to Chris in Ottawa, who says, hello, my friends. Charleston got a lot more than they bargained for tonight. I'm instantly intrigued by the angle involving Kenny. No one asked for any predictions, let alone mine, but I think Kenny eventually cost the team. The Bucks turn on him. Kota Ibushi saves Kenny, and the Golden Lovers reunite one last time. America could use some Golden Love right now. Also intrigued by, but somewhat troubled by Punk Moxley occurring next week rather than at the pay-per-view. Seems hot-shotted, though I suspect there's more afoot than meets the eye. Last, happy birthday to my brother Trevor, who turns 36 on Saturday. Well, happy birthday, Trevor. Happy birthday,
Trevor. I would be nearly positive that this is because they have, a bigger option for All Out. I don't think this is a case of, they are not under, you always want your television viewership to be, at a certain level. I mean, they are winning every Wednesday night during this period. I think next week they would have been number one regardless of this match happening or not. So I really don't feel that's the case at all. This is a company that, pay-per-view, they only do 4 of them a year. I guess 5th if you add Forbidden Door. But pay-per-view is a big revenue generator for them. So they are going to make sure that they have, as big a pay-per-view as possible. And this is also the one where it's the highest number to hit to try and beat last year's number. Like that streak is going to be very tough to extend. So yes, that'll be the big question for next week. Brian in New Jersey writes, outstanding first hour of the show between the Punk and Moxley's war of words and Danielson and Garcia putting on another tremendous match. I'm a big fan of this angle of Danielson trying to save Garcia's wrestler soul. Happy to see Kenny Omega back in the mix, but also concerned because of how he may be physically and because of Don Callis being back by his side. Very curious where this babyface trio win with heel seconds goes. I'm guessing Punk and Moxley next week will be something small to lead to something bigger at All Out, maybe throwing in Hangman Page to make it a 3-way.
We go to Noah from Vaughan, who says, love this episode so much. Danielson and Garcia is right up there with some of the best matches in Dynamite history. Main event was bonkers in all the right ways, and even if Kenny isn't 100%, seeing him wrestle again was so awesome. A couple of interesting decisions heading into the pay-per-view with Mox and Punk being announced for next week. I feel the most obvious is a returning MJF, and I feel like this could be an opportunity for a rare DQ finish, which would put a ton of heat on MJF for spoiling the match. Also, I got to say, I'm actually kind of happy FTR aren't challenging Swerve in Our Glory for the titles just yet. They've only been champions for about a month, and I'd like to see them have some sort of meaningful feuds before dropping the belts.
That is one outcome of doing a DQ that would work, I think. Like, that would be big enough that people would accept the DQ, that it really goes against the fabric of AEW that this guy is messing up this giant match. But I guess the question from there is, what is the follow-up there? Is it Punk and Moxley get booked again for the pay-per-view? Is MJF back into hiding, or is he back on the pay-per-view? But yeah, that would be one way out of this match if you wanted to do it that direction, depending on what the match becomes at the pay-per-view. Jordan from the Bronx, I'll kind of skim through this. Punk and Moxley was a great promo to start the show, but I didn't like the Hangman call-out going unanswered, especially being in West Virginia, his home base. Hangman comes off cowardly, which is not what he needs right now since he hasn't wrestled much since losing the title. I would almost be assured that there will be a response from Hangman, that they don't just leave that hanging there. That aside, the promo was biting and personal, which played well into their multiple brawls during the show. What didn't work for me was Jungle Boy. The crowd kind of got to him, but I got a kick out of his school teacher shameful stare back at the crowd, which actually stopped the what chants. Eat your heart out, Undertaker. Danielson and Garcia was amazing stuff. One of my favorite TV matches this year. The subtle yet expected return of Kenny Omega started great up until you saw all the new protective gear that he's wearing now. Seeing him in the compression top and the Stone Cold Grade shoulder brace made me feel uncomfortable. Like, again, this was all he's putting all this on because I think you want to convey this, this whole thing. Like, I don't think, I do believe this is all like the story, and not to say that I'm sure this guy is 100% may not even be in his possible, given all that this guy has gone through. But I feel this is very much the feeling they wanted you to have. Either way, fun match. Show overall was a very strong show. The ending seemed rushed as the cameras caught Kevin Dunn's syndrome and cut to multiple shots at once while Andrade turned on Dragon Lee. 8 daddy-ass scissors out of 10.
We go to Mr. Kane, who says, very good show tonight. Like the bookending of the Punk Mox angle at the start of the second hour. Very smart, although I was definitely clamoring for more physicality. Awesome match between Garcia and Danielson. Garcia just continues to grow exponentially before our eyes, and the organic "you're a wrestler" chance as he stood between Danielson and Jericho was perfect. Omega's return and the selling of all his injuries really brought into question the possibility of the trio making it into the finals. Love the adversity story building to make the eventual victory so much more meaningful.
Okay, last two here. Cody from Maine. Another classic first half to an episode of Dynamite. Not to say the second half was of poor quality. On a show where the presumed all-out main event was announced for next week, Kenny Omega returned and daddy-ass scissored his way back into our hearts. My biggest takeaway was the crowning of the company's top new heel. The guy on the floor with the massive sign. Yeah, dude, this guy he was facing the hard camera, and he had like a refrigerator box that he had just folded out to have this gigantic sign that I can't imagine what these people who paid for floor seats had to look at for a long portion of this show.
And finally, we go to Magan, who says, an effectively bookended Dynamite with the Punk Moxley promo and the return of Omega in the main event. The middle of the show was strong with Danielson Garcia shutting it down with their excellent 2 out 3 falls match, and the post-match aftermath with a conflicted Garcia surrounded by "You're a Wrestler" chants was tremendous. I'd bet that Jericho Garcia will be the match for All Out. Women's match is once again in the 9:30 death slot. Must be a day that ends in Y. I'm pretty leery about Kenny returning with Don Callis tagging along. Cole Red Dragon betraying the Bucks constitutes Kenny going babyface. Does anyone see Punk Moxley having a real finish next week?
I would say it's certainly possible, unless you're shooting an angle that would necessitate doing a non-finish, which would be very, very rare, especially for such a big match. So there you go. That is all of the feedback. Thanks to everybody for sending in your thoughts on the show, as well as joining us in the chat discussing tonight's episode of the show. I am going to be back on Thursday. Once again, the G1 Climax final podcast will be Thursday at 1 Eastern for Post Wrestling Cafe members. And then the Wellness Policy and a free edition of MCU Later are going to be dropping. And looking ahead to next week, a programming note. We are not going to be doing Rewind-A on Monday night. Instead, Braden and I will be doing it live on Tuesday at noon Eastern time. So note the special start time because Braden, Davie, and I will be going to Raw Monday night, and looking forward to watching a 3-hour edition of Raw live.
Oh yeah, we're getting our signs ready to take as we speak. John, we've got some lovely title belts here. I think we should give you one for the big event.
This is going to be quite the experience. I might do a whole separate show on my night out with Braden and Davie. What I learned. That's the podcast everybody wants. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with you guys next Monday. And we will, if any of you are in the Toronto area, come say hello. Unless Braden does not like any kind of interaction with fans. So steer clear of him. But me and Davie we're safe to be around.
To us. Yeah.
All right. That's going to wrap it all up. Davie, thank you so much for jumping in, carrying the load as Braden let you down tonight.
You were very, what's new, eh? No, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed the last 3 weeks chatting Dynamite with you, John, and looking forward to Raw.
Yes. So there you have it. Thanks to everyone for joining us. That's going to wrap up the show. All of the latest news can be found at postwrestling.com, and check out Andrew Thompson's new interview with Chris Hero, the rematch between them. They had a great interview last year, and they just did a follow-up. So that dropped on, you can link to it from postwrestling.com. It's also up on Andrew Thompson interviews on YouTube. So that's going to wrap things up. Thank you to everybody for joining us here for Rewind-A-Dynamite.